I'd like to call this evening's King Schools Board of Education regular meeting to order. Mr. Morrow, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Phillips.
Here.
Ms. Groff.
Here.
Ms. Cowan.
Here.
Mr. Skirl.
Here.
Mr. Belfrom.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excuse me, may I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
I'll make that motion. I'll second the motion.
Mr. Morrow?
Ms. Cowan.
Yes.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes.
Ms. Groff.
Yes.
Mr. Skirl.
Yes.
Mr. Belfrom.
Yes. So next on the agenda are reports and presentations, but before we do that, I'm going to call a quick audible that is not on the agenda, and we'd like to welcome Mr. Kleiss back to Kings Junior High School. We are all wearing, well, I'm sort of wearing Kentucky blue in honor of him, and we wish him well, and we're glad to have him back. He's a vital asset, as are all of our teachers and staff. So I was told by Mrs. Groff that he watches. So Mr. Kleiss, welcome back. It's good to see you. With that, we'll go to reports and presentations. Mr. Sears.
So, Mr. Belfrom, before we get started with my report, I would like to commend the board. You all look very, very good in blue. I attended the University of Kentucky and I have my UK tie on, so I'm pretty proud of that. So we appreciate the board participating, but also to piggyback on those sentiments. It was great to see Mr. Kleiss today in his classroom, engaging with students, and just a tremendous teacher at Kings Junior High. We're really fortunate to have him back, and wish him the best as he gets his feet acclimated into this school year. So we're excited about that. Tonight I'll be in charge of the first two presentations. The first one is in a very exciting time for us that we're proud to introduce. We have 3 Kings High School seniors who have been named semifinalists for the 2023 National Merit Scholarship Program. We'd like to ask Aaron Groff, Zach Spring, and Sam Webster, who are sitting right here. Could you guys please stand up? They position themselves perfectly. These young men are among the 16,000 semifinalists in the 68th Annual National Merit Scholarship Program competition. As semifinalists, they now have an opportunity to continue in the competition for the 7,250 National Merit Scholarships worth nearly $28 million that will be offered next spring. The 3 are in order to enter the 2023 National Merit Scholarship Program. These then high school juniors took the 2021 preliminary SAT, which is the PSAT qualifying test, which served as an initial screen of program entrance. The semifinalists include the highest scoring entrants in each state. To be considered for a merit scholarship award, the semifinalists must fulfill several requirements to advance to the finalist level of competition. About 95% of the semifinalists are expected to attain finalist standing, and close to half of the finalists will win a National Merit Scholarship, earning the Merit Scholar title, which will be announced in February of 2023. I'd first like to introduce Aaron Groff. Raise your hand, let everybody know who you are. Turn around and yes. Aaron is the son of Janelle and Andy Groff. He holds a GPA of 4.64. His future plans will include studying chemical engineering at one of the following secondary institutions: MIT, Georgia Tech, The Ohio State University, or the University of Pennsylvania. Aaron is a member of the Kings bowling team, Kings math team, National Honor Society, and Spanish National Honor Society. When he isn't at school, hanging out with friends, or studying, Aaron works as a lifeguard with Swim Safe. Congratulations to Aaron Groff.
Yeah, look back at mom, buddy.
Next, I'd like to introduce Zach Spring. Yep. Zach's parents are Joel and Dan Spring. His current GPA is 4.51. Zach is deciding upon Carnegie Mellon, the University of Texas at Austin, the University of Illinois, or the Ohio State University to study computer science. He is a member of the King's tennis team, National Honor Society, and Spanish National Honor Society. Zach also has his own social media content creation business, and he is a merchandise supervisor at Kings Island. Congratulations to Zach. And lastly, Sam Webster. Sam's parents are Jennifer and Lyle Webster. He is still deciding between Stanford University, the University of Texas at Austin, the University of Illinois, and the Ohio State University to study computer science. He has a current GPA of 4.7. Sam is a member of the King's soccer team, King's math team, National Honor Society, and Spanish National Honor Society. He also works at Kings Island as a lifeguard. Congratulations to Sam. As you can see, not only these students are well-rounded academically, but they participate in a significant number of opportunities at Kings High School and make a huge difference to our school system. So we appreciate everything you guys have done. I have a few tokens of appreciation and acknowledgement. We wish you nothing but the best in your future endeavors and good luck the rest of the way. Thank you.
Back there, then I'll have to stand in front of you. Behind the table, I'll have to stand in front of the table.
Nice job, guys. Great job.
You guys should stand and I'll, you guys stand here and I'm gonna make them stand around.
Okay.
Stand here, and I'll have you guys poke your heads in where I can get you. It's hard to see Deb. Let's put Deb on the end here. We'll put her on the end so you can see her face. Make sure you see John, next to Stacy, Mel. You were good, right? You want, okay, you want to be by your parent. Okay. All right. James, Deb, go this way just a little bit for me. Okay. Come here. Okay. Awesome. Congratulations.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, parents of these esteemed students, if you'd like to excuse yourselves, you're more than welcome.
You're more than welcome to stay as well.
You're more than welcome to stay, yes. Not kicking you out. Next on the reports and presentations is our presentation on the state report card.
Yes, Mrs. Gould, if you could pull up our report card. We are reorganizing the agenda briefly. So tonight, I'd like to take a few moments to share a little bit of information about our state report card. It's up at the top under reports. There you go. So earlier this week, late last week, actually, the state released the report card based on the testing data from the 2021 21 to 22 school year. So testing that was offered for our students last spring. So a couple of updates for this, just for the board and the community to know that the rating system that has been used in the past has changed to where it's now a 5-star rating system. So it was a letter grade in the past, and now that we're into a star rating system, there's no overall district rating for 22-23. So that will happen next year. So the first year that we'll have an overall summary rating will be next school year. There's not one offered this year throughout the state. There's no rating also for college, career, workforce, or military readiness for 22-23. So these are things that they'll catch up on, and then those will be added into the report card for next year. The information that I share is based on academic and opportunity to learn data. So I'll remind you that this is based on state testing, Ohio State testing that was done last spring, or end of course testing in a few subjects last school year. So in Kings, we're very excited about the performance in a number of key categories for our students. And I want to just call this out, and I start with our 5-star ratings. So as a school district, overall, we were rated a 5-star rating in the state in achievement, early literacy, and gap closing. Those are 3 extremely important measures for us as a district to be rated the highest rating in the state. Now, I want to just commend that the staff, our students, and our families, because if you think about last school year and the items and the experiences that we went through, we were navigating some very uncertain times, difficult decisions, a lot of students flowing in and out of school for various illnesses and reasons, as well as our staff as well. So I think to have a 5-star rating in achievement, early literacy, and gap closing is truly a testament to the work that our staff and our teachers have done with our students, but also the commitment to our kids that had to show up every day, work hard, even when they weren't there, dial in to classes, to complete missing work. It was a lot. And so we made a commitment to our community early on to keep our doors open as much as possible. There was one day last year of that school year that we were not able to keep the doors open due to COVID-related illnesses, basically with our staffing. There was one day. We had some snow days and a Super Bowl day, but other than that, it was really around the we were open every single day, and I think this data shows the value in that. From achievement standpoint, what this represents is that we significantly exceeds the state standards in academic achievement. We are relentless in our pursuit of our students to grow academically. It's our primary focus. It's one of the main reasons that we are here, and it's a tremendous focus for us as a district to continue to ensure that our students are academically prepared for life beyond the walls of our school district. The next component is early literacy. Early literacy component is a measure of reading improvement and proficiency for students in kindergarten through 3rd grade. The 5-star rating means that they've significantly exceeded the state standards in early literacy. But this is a testament to all of our teachers and support staff at the K-3 level, that when we see students that are off track at an early rate, we assess them and we dive in and meet the kids where they are and provide significant supports and growth opportunities for them to, by the end of that 3rd grade year, to be able to meet standards. So we're really excited about the early literacy efforts that have taken place across our district, and tremendous accomplishment for our teachers as well, as we've navigated kids coming in and out of school, many of them starting school for the first time without maybe a year of preschool due to the first year of COVID. And then gap closing. So gap closing is a measure of the reduction of educational gaps in student subgroups. So this really focuses on our subgroups, lots of different subgroup opportunities that we have. And so what we're doing is we're ensuring that this measures the achievement levels of those students. They're meeting benchmarks based on the various subgroup benchmarks that have been established. We are significantly exceeding the state standards in closing those educational gaps. So tremendous accomplishment. We're very proud of those 5-star ratings. We will continue to focus and grow those areas, but we're excited about that. The next one I want to call out is a 4-star rating in graduation. With this, when you look at the measure, it's an adjusted cohort graduation rate for 4- and 5-year 5-year time periods. This was very, I would say within 2, maybe 3 total students between a 5-star rating. It was very razor thin margin, which will again, we're navigating some difficult circumstances over the past year, and getting kids to the point where they're prepared to graduate. And there are some other factors, but we exceed the state standards and graduation rates. So a 4-star missed with, I mean, as we're talking, ours around a 95.9% graduation rate, and I think a 96.5 would have created a 5-star. So it's just a small number of students that we'll continue to work through.
Ms. Sears, can I jump in really quickly about this?
Please do.
I know I say this every year, but I'll just remind everybody with IDEA, federal law, students with disabilities based on their individual education program are allowed to stay if we deem it academically or transition to adult programming. And I took a hard look at this data, and students with disabilities are the reason, because we have our students in some very appropriate programming, Project Search, which I know you've heard of through Children's Hospital, Pathways, the Career Center. So we always, out of the students with disabilities realm, come up a little bit with the cohort, and sometimes we're out of the 5-year range because of a transition program that's very appropriate for those students to be in. So we watch those numbers, but this year's numbers from last year, that's the reason for that.
And that's we've identified that on our enrollment chart that's posted on our website. If you see there's a category, it says 23. So those kids are eligible to stay here till 23. 2 years ago, we had 2 students in that program. Last year we had 10. So there's a variation there. And then the last one that I'll call attention to is our progress. This component looks at growth of all students are making based on their past performances. So this is a growth. Oftentimes a 3-star rating is often looked at. I think in the past it was a C, and nobody liked having a C because it really didn't measure what it means. This means that our students met the growth expectations that were set forth by the state based on our past performance. So this is expected growth. So a 3-star is expected growth. A 2-star would be less than expected growth. A 1-star would be significantly less than expected growth. And the opposite is true on a 4 and 5. So when we look at growth, this is an important component, but we are seeing our students throughout the course of the last year met the growth standard. They grew as they were expected to grow. And I think it's an important distinction. Obviously that we want to continue to push for that to move into the 4 or 5-star level. We will continue to focus on that across our district. But I think the 3-star, it's not a negative at all, but it means our kids that we've met that growth standard. So what we were expected to grow. So obviously we'll continue to push and move forward with that. So the next slide talks about how we compare. So this is just to quantify a few numbers for the board and the community to see. So the first one is 15.2% of Ohio districts received a 5-star for achievement. Okay, so we're one of 15% of districts that received a 5-star. 8.1% of Ohio districts received a 5-star for early literacy. There are 607 districts in the state of Ohio, so just for a number to quantify. And then 48.3% of Ohio districts received a 5-star for gap closing. So a little more prevalent throughout the state with that. So only 5.3% of all districts in Ohio performed higher than Kings. So with the state ratings, and there were some ties in there. We're similar to with our total number was 22, but only 5.3% scored at a higher rate than we did. And then we rank in the top 12 in Southwest Ohio for overall performance. In the Southwest Ohio, we typically do that in a 4-county area, comparing to Butler, Warren, Claremont, and Hamilton County. So you can see, I would say from our end, there's a lot to be proud of here. There's a lot that we can build on as we move forward, but we're really thankful for the student, staff, and our parents in our district for leaning in, supporting the work that was happening each and every day. And I think it's nice you get to see some fruit for that labor that we put forth over the last year. So congratulations to our staff, our students, our parents. This just solidifies our work to make sure that we are a high-performing academic achievement organization. And then we will continue to search for continued growth. So take any questions or thoughts? I like that round of applause, Mrs. Phillips. Let's go with that.
Quick question. So I know you said the 3-star is at expectations. Seeing this, are there plans to get that up to a 4 for next year? And how do we get that higher?
Yeah, so we can get into, so I think what's going to happen with this is our plan is to put forth some energy into looking at some rationales or some areas that maybe are of opportunity for us. One of the things, and I'll just point this out, is sometimes fifth grade math, if you look at fifth grade math, it will show up differently. It looks as though, and it appears as though we did not make growth in fifth grade math. So that'll be an area to target. And we've received a couple questions on fifth grade math, but just to do some comparisons, and I'll compare, because I looked at this as well, like, because we want to learn from other folks that are doing well. But when there are 2 5-star districts near us that were 5-star overall, and especially in progress. But Loveland, their fifth grade scores were significantly below expectation. Sycamore was the same thing. Their fifth grade math scores were significantly below. Masons were significantly below. Indian Hill, Wyoming, Madeira. And so we're seeing some differences there. And so I actually sent an email to various superintendents around the city today asking if let's maybe get together and start to target some of that. Because it just, we wanted to see what does that look like. So
I saw the same thing. I went and compared. Do you think it could be the test?
Standards too high.
I don't want to say.
I mean, I'm not
why.
making.
It could be.
I'm not.
I think it could be a hard test. Because in every one of those districts, if you look in sixth grade, they all grew significantly. They met the growth standard beyond, because the mark was, down a little bit. So it's something we will continue to analyze. I'll say this, that Mr. Freeman and Mrs. Martin, as always, in October and November, they will drill down into the data behind our performance to a much greater degree. So this is to provide a big overview. Let us analyze it, dive in, look at it, and we'll provide some more specifics on some of these as we get in a little bit more.
And the other thing you mentioned at the beginning, the 2 years of COVID, when things were kind of upside down and everything else, that hopefully a piece of that will see some progress and improvement just by starting a normal school year this year, I would hope.
That's correct. Because if you recall, 2 years ago, 2020, our students did not take the assessments. So we didn't have a mark to analyze that. So
there's also some conversation around, in what grades do you learn certain standards, and now you're being tested on them. What grades were those students in 2020, and do we need to look to see if there's a reason that maybe we need to do a little bit more digging in the instruction around those years. So Matt and I've got to get into a little bit more.
Any more questions? Next on the items presented or reports and presentations is our STEM presentation. Oh, okay. Just bear with us. We're just checking to see if our presenter has arrived.
I did hear on the news today that the superintendent of schools for Ohio said about the report card that remember, this is only one indication of how well a district is doing. And I thought that was nice. I don't remember what channel, but my ears perked up when I heard that.
You guys would like to proceed. You want me to have a motion to proceed and come back to her?
Yeah.
Do you need a motion for that, Mr. Martin?
Yeah, we can do a motion to amend the agenda,
Okay. Could I have a motion to amend the agenda so we can,
move up public
yes,
participation.
move up public participation?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Morrow.
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Mr. Skirl,
Yes.
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Beltram.
Yes. Yeah.
All
Good.
So, yes.
Motion to go back.
Yeah, in the interest of time, so that all our public participants have time, could I have a motion to amend the amendment to restore the agenda to the previous version?
I'll make that motion. I'll second it.
Mr. Morrow.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Mr. Skirl,
Yes.
Mr. Beltram.
Yes. So now next on the agenda is our STEM presentation.
Hi.
Hello.
I think the microphone's on there. I'm gonna do a little introduction, so apologies. It's really all my fault. It's really all my fault. I said the wrong time. You think I'd know what time the board meeting begins. So, I know. I know. All right, so here we go. So last spring, I attended a workforce education conference with some colleagues and heard a presentation that really enlightened and inspired me. The presentation presented by the McKinsey group was on the future work of Ohio. And the gist of the presentation really was that there are certain skills required in rising in demand jobs, and that Ohio's current rate of high school graduation and post-secondary attainment is not able to support the need for the future skilled talent. So you might be thinking that that doesn't sound very inspiring. That's actually kind of depressing, Matt. Like, why are you bringing this to us? So as I listened further though in this presentation, they shared a chart of occupations that are expected to grow over the next 10 years. Near the top of the list of growing occupations were those in STEM fields. STEM is an acronym that stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. According to the report in 2019, about 5% of Ohio jobs were filled by STEM professionals. In 2030, that number is expected to grow to 26%. So that's a pretty significant jump. You can see from our 3 national merit semifinalists, did you hear kind of their interested job fields? Very interesting. So the skills required in these new in-demand jobs include things like adaptability, a growth mindset, self-direction, the ability to gain comfort with uncertainty and change. Other important skills were around communication, critical thinking, and problem solving, things that I hope sound familiar to you. Mr. Sears has presented information about our Power 5 skills, so just kind of remember that. So next I started thinking about what this looks like in Kings. How do we teach these skills and help prepare students for jobs we don't quite know exist yet? One of the ways we teach these skills is through STEM education opportunities in our district, and this is actually what inspired me. You might immediately start making connections with STEM to popular things at our high school, like our engineering program, our computer science program. You would be absolutely right. You might also think or also know at our high school that we teach networking, advanced chemistry, biology, and physics. We also teach digital media arts, fashion design, and architecture, as well as biomedical science. But what you may not know is that we also have STEM opportunities, or as Jessica Collett is going to explain to us over here to my left, STEAM opportunities for our younger learners. And so that's inspiring to me because as I think of these future ready skills, our Power 5 skills, and what that's going to look like in Kings, just imagine what our students are going to be able to do that are getting these experiences younger and younger and younger, like Columbia. So just wanted to take an opportunity here to allow Jessica and Shelley Bogart, who's the principal at Columbia, to kind of share some great opportunities in this area at our district. So I'll toss it over to you.
Thank you. Are you driving?
Don's driving now.
Thank you. All right, so as Matt said, STEAM is my class, but STEM is what you hear a lot in the media. You also will hear things like STREAM, which is science, technology, reading, engineering, art, and math. We focus on STEAM at Columbia, and the main focus of my class would be the science, the engineering, and the math part, because they have other opportunities for technology and art in their special areas. So we use technology as a tool. In the process, we learn a few things about it. And then we also use art more on the creative thinking side of things. However, some of the assignments, they do have artistic skills involved with them as well. So you can go ahead and. So as a special, one of the things that is great is that it incorporates the mathematical practices outside of the math classroom. So some students come to math class being a former math teacher for 20 years with a negative connotation about that class. So I'm able to incorporate those mathematical practices in my class in an environment that they aren't putting up a wall to right away. So as a special, every student gets that opportunity. I connected to the content standards the best that I can. There's so much challenge and problem solving going on, and even creativity. STEM education, it supports students becoming innovators, inventors, self-reliant, and logical thinkers. And the nice thing about it being a special is that every student is receiving these same experiences at Columbia. All 5th and 6th graders, they don't have to be identified gifted, they don't have to be identified or on an IEP. They don't have to have a certain teacher who is STEM focused. Every student is getting exposed to these opportunities. I was fortunate enough to get to participate in an educator externship last spring. And I worked with Tobach Precision, and it was through Sinclair University. And it was just basically, Sinclair is working with companies that are in the manufacturing field, trying to get more educators in the companies that deal with manufacturing so that we can then bring those experiences back to our students. They don't need hundreds and thousands of more manufacturers in the employment field. However, they need more than what they're getting. And there's a lot of misconceptions about manufacturing. So they wanted educators to come in and see what happens on a daily basis. And I have to say, I was completely blown away. I had misconceptions about manufacturing as a career as well. And I was able to clear all that up. And now I can bring that back to my students. But the one thing that stood out most to me was I had this impression that machines are doing all the work. So do you really need to be that great of a thinker to work in the field of manufacturing? And my whole entire time I was there, I listened to people problem solve. This machine isn't printing these materials the way they need to be. It's not precise enough. Can we use this tool? Can we try this? And they literally stood there and collaborated over the machines. So it was eye-opening to me because these were real people, really creative thinkers that were trying to make these $1 million machines work the way they wanted them to work. So that is an experience I can now share with my students that I would not have known ahead of time. And there are so many career-related opportunities in STEAM and that a lot of kids aren't even familiar with. We're so focused on the careers that we see on a daily basis, professional athletes, teachers, nurses, which are all great careers, but there are so many other things they can do. Even engineering, we were talking in my class the other day, and they thought engineering was always levers and switches and gadgets, but there are other types of engineering careers that they didn't realize were also engineering. The other thing I learned at the externship was that college is not the only route to a successful, lucrative career. And one of the things that the president of the company shared with me was they need to get kids to understand this at a younger age. So high schools are doing a great job, and then there's the career centers that are doing a great job, but they need kids to realize that college is not the only route, and they want them to start tinkering with things at a younger age. They don't get that same experience that some of the people in our generation got working on cars or just taking things apart as they used to. So they're not used to working with their hands. And he actually said 5th and 6th grade is the best age to start introducing kids to some of these other options. I was well, then I'm in the right spot then. Some of the things that I've done so far, this is a very new class. We've worked on the engineering design process. They've already had science and math classes, and they know some of those properties, but engineering is brand new to them at our level. So we just do a simple process just to get the idea that there's always room for improvement. We've built structures with constraints and restrictions. We've done forensic science activities, which actually I just saw on Twitter, a high school teacher did one of the same activities I did. And I thought, oh no. And then I thought, well, I bet they did it completely different because they're teaching a different skill along with that activity. We did some prosthetics. We also even did some advocacy during the prosthetics lesson about whether or not it's an advantage in an athletic situation. So they read some articles and they watched some videos, and we also saw some 3D printing that was being done with prosthetics that could save money, and even how they're used with pets. We look at architecture. Luckily, I have a husband who is in that field, so I have some real life expertise to pass along to them. We did some outer space stuff and movable books, like 3D books where they open them and they pop out. And then mazes with marbles, and our gifted program does a maze activity too. And I thought it was really interesting to look at the difference between what he did in his class and what I did with every student in the building. They got a lot of the same properties, but completely different levels. And so they're getting that exposure outside of that opportunity that they had being identified. Let's see, where was I? Mazes, solar energy. That one I really enjoyed. I learned a ton during that, especially about the cost per kilowatt in solar panels versus regular electricity. We did some research on California and we compared it to Ohio and Chicago and where is it a good idea and where isn't it. I did a digital breakout with algebra last year, and the kids were like, this is harder than the algebra we're doing in class, but they did it. And they did it well. And they got to hold up the sign of how long it took them to break out. And even the kids who broke out towards the end of the week, they were proud that they did it. And they didn't care that their time was longer than someone else's. And then they got to create their own breakout room once they finished as an extension activity. A data analysis probability unit, just trying to reinforce, how the media can tweak data, and that you can find data to support anything. And then we did a bunch of activities related to probability. We had an extra week before winter break. So we did a chemistry of candy where we worked on physical and chemical changes. And then I also had them do an extension from the movable books, and they made cards for the hospital and a retirement community. They made pop-up holiday cards. So that was kind of like a fun little extra thing that group of kids got to do. So here's just some examples in class. I'm not very good at taking pictures and videos in my room while I'm working. So luckily I did have a few because I had a couple days warning. And then some of the aides in my class have taken pictures and videos, so they sent me some as well. So that if you could go back one more, this is, they were doing the engineering design process. They were given a piece of tinfoil. They had to keep my porcelain bear that is 23 years old from sinking. So that they had to redesign and design and redesign over and over again. And the next one is, this was from last year. This was a forensic science activity. They had shredded documents. Every group had a different document. They had to assemble them, then read the documents and interpret the information. And they had to read everybody's document. So how well they assembled it affected the other groups as well. And then they had to decide what the outcome of the case was. This was just from the outer space unit. They did constellations. I gave them a map of the northern hemisphere at a certain time of year and chalk. And I said, now you figure out where a constellation is. So they drew a constellation out of a hat, and then they had to go around and figure out where they were in relationship to everybody else. This was during the outer space unit as well. I was able to get Cincinnati Observatory to do a virtual field trip with us last year. They only were able to do it for 1 week out of the rotation. But in this, you can kind of see on the screen in the background, it's the Zoom. And she was actually walking those 3 kids through what it would be like to land on Mars. So she was giving them like actions, and then they were acting it out in front of the class. So that was fun. Here's a picture of the movable cards that some of them made for the holiday cards. That was the extension for right before winter break. So I delivered those to Bethesda North and then Maple Knoll. And this is from the architecture unit. So they had to choose a famous building or structure in the world and then find geometric properties on it and label them on a Google slide. And then we shared them so they could see geometric properties on several buildings around the world. And if they had time, when they finished that requirement, they got to try and build the structure out of the materials they had available. So there's the Eiffel Tower. This is from this year. So this is the pig house. So we have Peppa Pig trying to be safe from the big bad wolf. And so they had a bunch of constraints. They had 16 index cards, a foot of tape, and directions. And then they had 5 coins that they were allowed to purchase extra supplies with. And then they had to test it. So you can go on to the next. So this is what the big bad wolf looks like. It's an air compressor where I string through the wolf mask and shoot it out its nose. But it's so much fun to say, what do you think the big bad wolf is going to be? And they say, it's you. And I say, and they're like, a fan. I said, does that sound big and bad? That sounds more like a puppy dog. And then I like pick this big air compressor up from under my desk and drop it. And then you hear the, so there, here, this is a video of one of the tests from class last week. They had 3 different testing stations. They had to move closer and closer. If they made it past the first one, then they moved closer. Peppa's inside. And they had like requirements of, they had to use a certain roof. They had to be a certain height. Now they get coins so they can optimize it again. That was the end. You can turn it off. I can listen to myself speak. So they had to have 4 windows, a door that Peppa could fit through. It had to be at least 8 inches, which was a huge struggle for many of the groups. They had to use the roof and they only had the limited supplies. Go on to the next one. And this one, I brought this in because this is all they had. Well, not the comics, because that would have spent the whole class period trying to keep them from reading the comics. So they had this much newspaper, a roll of tape. They didn't have the restriction of the tape because they do a reflection after the pig. And one of the biggest complaints was the amount of supplies they had and that constraint was really hard. And so the next day I say, so your constraint was really hard was the tape. What if I gave you unlimited tape? And they're like, oh, we can do anything with unlimited tape. Then I give them this and this. And I say, you have to build a paper table that is at least holds a textbook. That's an algebra textbook. I picked algebra because that's usually everyone's favorite first math class. And it has to hold the textbook 15 centimeters above the table. So then we get into the big conversation of the difference between centimeters and inches, because the day before we used inches. So heaven forbid we change. And these young ladies came up to test and they were like, this is never going to work. This is never going to work. This is going to fall apart. And you can see by the look on their faces, the shock that their table held that book. And if it held the book and they met the requirement, then I gave them another book. And they kept going until it fell, and then they could go optimize their design and try and hold more books. And they learned that sometimes their optimizations aren't better. They had to hold it for 3 Mississippis. Oh. But this video was taken by one of the instructional aides in the classroom, and I was watching it, putting this presentation together, and I hadn't really paid attention to their faces. Like, actually brought tears to my eyes, watching their excitement and their pride over the fact that they built a table to hold a textbook out of just this, and a time constraint. They had about 25 minutes. That's all I have for you. I have to say, though, it's been a true pleasure teaching this class. After teaching math for 20 years, which I love that I get to incorporate it in an environment that's not scary to kids. And it's just been so refreshing to have all this excitement around everything that we do.
And I just want to jump in really quick and give huge props and kudos to Jessica, because when she came back after maternity leave, I said, I did a great job. She said, what is it? I said, the STEAM class. I don't know what we're going to do, but you could do it. And she jumped in 100%, and has created an amazing class for our businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And again, I just want to say, this is for all 5th and 6th grade students. So we didn't have this opportunity when these young men stood before us today. They didn't have this opportunity to take this class. So imagine with the exposure of what our kids get now at younger grades, and we have some other things even younger with coding and things at the elementary level, but imagine with this early exposure, what kids are going to be able to do as they get older. So thank you guys for all of your hard work and for being here today to share it with us. Thanks so much.
I'll just call out one thing just before. I was in Jessica's classroom last week and happened to witness the big bad wolf blowing down Peppa Pig's house. So that was a fun activity. And what prompted me to go into that classroom was I could tell outside, the door was shut. I could tell something was happening in there, and you could hear just the excitement, the passion, the enthusiasm. It prompted me to open that door because you could just hear learning happening, and it was fantastic. So I look at the pictures, and I know we've talked a little bit about future skills, and then but I carry this kind of wherever I go, and we're gonna do more and more rolling out with this. But when you think of the things that are going on in there, and it fits with our Power 5 future skills of being a communicator, a critical thinker, a problem solver, a collaborator, and then career, college, and life ready. Everything that's happening there is building towards these skills that our kids. And I just want to commend you, Jessica, for taking a risk, modeling that for our kids as well. And we appreciate all that you're doing. So thank you.
Next on the agenda for this evening is public participation. The Kings Local School Board of Education encourages all parents, staff members, and community members to attend meetings and encourages visitors to participate in their meetings. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to state his or her reason for addressing the board. We ask that speakers avoid personal attacks on individuals during their public address to the board. If an individual has an issue with an employee, we ask that you request a private meeting with the superintendent or that employee's direct supervisor. Please keep in mind that Board of Education meetings are held so that the board can conduct their business in public. The board president is the spokesman for the board and may need to consult with other board members in order to respond to the public. If a question from the public can be answered immediately, it may be. However, if time is needed to study the issue, the board may choose to make a statement at a later date. Our first participant this evening is Katie Isaacs. Excuse me.
Hi, I address you tonight with the dual lens of both a teacher and parent within our district. As a teacher, I see our people working both in action and behind the scenes to make our students and district flourish. As a parent, I see our community members working side by side in order to do the same. I speak tonight in emphasis of how incredibly vital supporting our November operating levy is for our students and our community. Much of the counter argument against our levy centers around theories that our district has money in some hidden form waiting to be used in the event our levy does not pass. I assure you this is not the case. This levy will directly impact our students and our people. Previously, I taught in a district where the same wave of misinformation proliferated and our levy failed. Following our field levy, I stood in a hallway with my coworkers as we held signs with the names of hundreds of our people who were going to be impacted and inevitably let go. We stood to show solidarity with our people in hopes that this mythical money the other side spoke of would somehow appear. It did not. Our district was left with no choice but to implement a reduction in force, letting hundreds of our people go simultaneously. I was midway through teaching a lesson when I received the official list containing the staff members impacted. This list was not generated based on a staff member's performance, involvement, or passion. Our people had been reduced to a contractual timestamp. If a district does not have funds to compensate its people and function, it must reduce its staff. However, as someone who witnessed the aftermath, I assure you that these cuts will eliminate a force that is irreplaceable. Education is dependent on people. We depend on people to show up every day with the intent to prepare, protect, grow, and embrace our students. Anyone who has authentically experienced our district knows that our people rise to this expectation daily. My daughters are flourishing because of our people. Walking into our preschool and childcare at the beginning of each year feels like coming home because of our people. Our transition from preschool into KME childcare and full-day kindergarten was seamless because of our people. The paragon of a car pickup line is a feat in itself, made possible because of our people. Our people are making magic in every building and area in our district. Our resource officers, cafeteria, maintenance, custodial staff, secretaries, nurses, paraprofessionals, school psychologists, administration, teachers, and central office are irreplaceable in their love for and knowledge of our students. Our people love our kids. To reduce them would leave an irrevocable chasm in the experience provided to our students. Our people show up adhering to the obligation of supporting all areas of growth in our students. Our people show up for our kids in every way, every day. We now plead with you to show up and vote in our support of our levy so that our people can keep showing up for our kids. Thank you.
Next is Carrie Schneider.
Good evening. Webster defines fair as in a manner that is honest or impartial or that conforms to rules. Let's be clear. There's nothing fair about having to ask for a levy to pay to educate our students. It isn't fair and it isn't right. 25 years ago, the way schools are funded was declared unconstitutional, and that we are still fighting with the impact of that decision. A decision that has been ruled unconstitutional 4 times and has resulted in requiring Ohio schools to, every X number of years, ask the community for money to fund its most valuable resource, its children, and by extension, its schools. It's not fair, and until that ruling changes, here we all are, left to pick up the pieces to figure out how to keep educating our kids. It isn't fair that some people really don't understand the significant and immediate impact this will have on programs, staffing, and the level of education in our district if it fails. Real, tangible impacts that will negatively affect our students. We haven't faced this level of reality before, and it's important that people start hearing that. It's been 6 years since we've had a levy. Our board has done phenomenal things to make our money last as long as it has, but don't be fooled into thinking that those choices remain. Oftentimes, we as educators do such a great job of making it work with less that it becomes the norm. The less here is not something we will be able to overcome without significant consequences to our current students and the ones who keep enrolling. It isn't fair that if this levy fails, the board will have to make even more exceptionally challenging decisions, the fallout of which will have ripple effects on our reputation for academic, musical, engineering, art, and athletic excellence. I think about how long it's taken Little Miami to recover and shudder to think how easily Kings could fall victim to the unfair levy system. I realize that everything is more expensive now than it was 6 years ago. I'm not ignorant. I live in the world and pay my taxes too. Simply asking for a moment of pause to consider the other costs, effects that may not be seen but will inevitably come. Lower property values, harder time selling a house, the devastation of losing teachers to other districts, the loss of opportunities. To quote some words from the West Wing, education is the silver bullet. Education is everything. We don't need little changes. We need gigantic, monumental changes. Schools should be absolutely free of charge for its citizens, just like national defense. That's my position. I just haven't figured out how to do it yet. Since we haven't figured out how to do it yet either, tragically, we are left with no other option but to ask our community to support our schools, our teachers, and our kids. It isn't fair, but it's right. Thank you.
Next participant is Rebecca Beer.
I am here tonight to correct as well as clarify some comments made by a board member that were posted on social media after last month's board meeting. In response to concerns raised about inappropriate books at last month's board meeting, it was implied that it was the first time the board was made aware of the book complaints and that they were being immediately addressed. This is incorrect. The board has been copied on all emails since my initial contact with the school on December 16th, 2021.
The first time that I was ever contacted by a board member was the week after these books were shared with the public at last month's board meeting. It was stated that the book, I'll Give You the Sun, was donated to King's, which implies that an individual donated the book where it ended up in a classroom at Columbia. This is incorrect. This book, along with 2 others, was purchased through the King's Foundation. These books were specifically ordered or requested by a staff member. They were not randomly donated. In response to the comment, quote, "It is not on her open bookshelves, but in a bag in a completely separate area," unquote, I would ask the question, why do we have a book in our schools that needs to be hidden in a bag? It was also implied that the books in teacher classrooms are only overflow books from the library, which is incorrect. Teachers routinely stock their classrooms with books for silent reading, etc. When someone asked how people do the books were in the school, the board member replied that the books may have appeared to be in the library, but were not. This is incorrect. 3 of the books were in a classroom, but 3 were in Columbia's library. I was surprised that those 3 books were reviewed and returned to the Columbia Library. These books do contain some sexual content and at the very least should require parental consent to be checked out by students. As I've conveyed to you many times, there needs to be an audit of all school and classroom library books, especially in grades K through 6. I have already sent you documentation of 9 other books at Columbia that should be reviewed, 3 of which contain explicit descriptions of underage sex, drug use, harmful stereotypes, police brutality, and excessive profanity. In the 9 months' time since I first contacted the district, books with inappropriate content still remain available to young students. 3 months of valuable time was lost when emails were not responded to. One specifically written to board members to express my disappointment. Even then, I did not receive a response from anyone on the board. I understand that there is a process for establishing new guidelines, and I have explicitly followed the district policy regarding book complaints. The most important task at hand, in my opinion, is the removal of inappropriate books currently available to our young students. When it is stated that parents are the final authority on what their children read, how is that accomplished when they have no idea what kind of inappropriate books are currently in our schools?
Next is Sandy Kristoff.
Hello, members of the board. I'm glad that our spotlight on inappropriate books last month got your attention and the attention of the public. Obviously, the public sees this as a very important issue. So after 9 months of uncovering and discovering books that we felt posed a danger to our students, we felt we needed to do something to create urgency. And now I see that book review is on the agenda. Yay. So I hope that you've decided to form a publicly transparent committee to review the current holdings in both the school libraries and classrooms and all requests before purchases are made. So the book, I'll Give You the Sun, thankfully was determined to be inappropriate for Columbia, but it was sent to the junior high and high school. Are there any criteria that would prevent books from being available at all? A book similar to I'll Give You the Sun with the same content is now on a wish list. So will the new procedures catch this? Seems like it shouldn't be. I hope you'll publicly spell out what the criteria is that will be used to weed out books that could be determined to be harmful to minors or without serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Even for advanced readers, excellent books can be found that do not contain sexual content or excessive profanity, books that are mature content. So many books are available now that have explicit and detailed sexual content, sexual excitement, sexual battery, profanity, racism, political hatred, police hatred, and they can be checked out at the public library, don't need to be paid for with taxpayer money. What is the justification to introduce our children to material that would be classified as rated R or even X if they were found in films? The most important things is to keep parents involved in consenting, and an important part of handling these books. More transparency and responsiveness to public communication requests would be helpful as well. Thank you.
Next is Deb Gill.
Hi. It's been a very good meeting. I hate to put a damper on it right now. And I do notice that we have some children in the audience. I don't know if the parents want to have them leave the room or cover their ears, but I'm going to be talking about I'll Give You the Sun. I'd like to know if anybody on the board has read this book. Okay, then you'll know that I'm paraphrasing a little bit of it, and I'm also doing some actual quotes. It's about twins, a boy and a girl. And in the very beginning, first of all, it's about a 400-page book, and this is only in the first 130 pages or so. 13-year-old Noah is saying, "You're going over, you pussy," Fry shouts. He's talking to a friend. Now, he says about Fry, he calls everyone gay when he's not calling them homo and pussy. Then in another section, Noah and a kid are fighting. Their limbs are entwined. Quote, "When I begin to suspect, when I realize I have a hard-on, a supernaturally hard-on, it's jammed into Zephyr's stomach." There's also areas in the first 130 pages where the Lord's name is used in vain. Then a little bit later, when he's 13 and a half years old, he's talking with someone and then hollers, and I'm sorry that I have to say this, "Fuck you, you toilet licking sociopaths." Then he's at a party and where they're drinking beer. And again, this child is 13 and a half years old. And he is talking to a girl that has a thick accent like Dracula. And with no warning, her crackly lips are pushing against mine, in between mine, and I can taste her. She pulls back and whispers in his ear, "See you in a few years." And then there's, at the same party, he sees a couple kissing and thinks it's a guy and a girl, and realizes that the hands that are on this gentleman's back, this kid's back, they can't be a girl's hands, they're a boy's hands. His hands moving like he can't kiss her hard or fast enough. The girl's hands around the guy's back are another guy's. Eyes closed, smashed noses, mouths crushing together, their bodies climbing up each other, falling down each other at the same time. I've never seen two guys kiss like this, except in my own head, and it wasn't even half that good. They're so hungry. Now, I'm sorry, but do we really need books like this? This was a fantastic board meeting. You guys are saying how great you are with the kids, and then you have trash like this in the library. Yes, it was in Columbia. Now apparently it's a junior in high school. I don't think it needs to be in any school ever. And that is one reason why I am against the levy, because if that's the kind of where our money is going with this kind of book, I'm not interested in giving you guys any money. Thank you.
Gail, can I ask you a question? Did you read the book in its entirety?
I haven't gotten that far yet because there was a list of 14 books that I received, and this is my last one. Some of them were a lot shorter. So no, this what I told you is just in the first 129 pages.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you that. Thank you.
Next is Scott Sheeter.
Right, thanks to the board for the time tonight, and I'd like to commend Mr. Groff for his award tonight. That was very good. Appreciate it. It's great to see. I am talking about the levy, of course. It's just too much. Yes, we do need more money at some point, but not $7.5 million a year. We're going to price people out of Kings. Our elderly, sooner or later, they can't keep affording more and more real estate taxes. How about the young families who want to move here? If you didn't see, the Fed's going to increase interest rates again tomorrow. So you're going to increase interest rates, increase real estate taxes. Young families won't be able to afford to move here sooner or later. How about businesses? Are they going to want to come to this district knowing that we have the highest effective tax rate in Warren County, which that will happen if we pass this levy? Right now, we're number 3. If if we pass this levy, we will have the highest effective tax rate in Warren County, and that's per the Warren County Auditor's Office. I too looked at the school report card, but I'd compare it, also looking at that, compare that to the total operating expenditure per pupil. King's getting a 22 out of 25. That is fantastic. Our operating expenses per pupil at fiscal year 21 per the Ohio Department of Education was $12,425.99. Little Miami got a 21 out of 25. That's pretty good too. Their average spend was $11,717 per kid. Wayne got a 23 out of 25. Their average spend was $11,523.59. Mason got a 22, but their spend was higher than ours. Their spend was $12,700. Springboro got a 24 out of 25. Their spend, $9,506.25. I have no clue how they got that number so low. Maybe we should be talking to them. Maybe everybody in Warren County should be talking to Springboro to see how are they so effective spending their money. That is phenomenal. That was great to see. But so Kings is right in the middle of Warren County, that's fine. But our spending is higher than almost everybody else in Warren County. We're the third highest spending per pupil of the 8 in Warren County. There is a lack of transparency about this levy. We've had 0 public meetings. There is no finance committee has been established. There's no performance reviews, which people have talked about. There's a lack of trust. We have board members taking contributions from the teachers union, and the teachers union is the biggest beneficiary of this.
That's your time, Mr. Sheeter.
Thank you.
Next is Rachel Immerman.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rachel Immerman, a proud teacher here in Kings. Last month that we met, it was, I believe, the day before all of our students started to come. And I talked about how excited I was to welcome in a new class of 4th graders into my room, as well as how hard it was to let go some of our former 4th graders. But I'm here to share how well our year is going so far. And of course, speaking in support of our incredible King School District. So over the past month, my colleagues and I have spent so much time making sure that our classrooms feel like a family. Of course, we teach academics. We teach our students math and language arts and science and social studies and all this incredible STEAM efforts that we're doing and so much more. But at the grassroots of our classroom, the most important thing that I know that I want, and I know that so many of my colleagues do in the Kings local school district want, is that for every single student who walks into our classrooms, they feel safe, they feel important, and they feel loved. And I know that's what we've spent this last month doing. And I'm proud to be standing here a month later telling you that our classrooms are growing. Our classrooms are becoming this incredible unit of strength and friendship and what really feels like a family. Our incredible school district lets us do things with gifted education. So for instance, in 4th grade, we have the incredible support of a gifted math coordinator, and all of the 4th grade teachers are getting support that lets us enrich our students' math curriculum. We also have the ability to have incredible mental health resources. So unfortunately, in my classroom alone, we've had a lot of students experiencing death in their families. And that's been really hard to go through. However, we start every morning with a morning meeting that students feel the ability to share and trust in each other and go through those hardships. They also have the ability to have the Beach Acres school-based therapist supports, or our students go check in with a school counselor and know that they will be seen that week. Not all school districts have these resources, but I am so proud to say that I am a teacher in Kings, and luckily we do. And so parents, community members, I'm asking you and reminding you to get out and vote on November 8th. These are our kids, this is our town, and this is our future. We want to keep King strong. Thank you.
Our last participant is Jen Alge. Am I saying that correctly, ma'am? Algie.
Thank you. Reading a diverse array of books and periodicals creates more critically thinking citizens. This has never been more clear and important. These board meetings or public offerings are basically an advertisement for the need for reading more and more and more. My name's Jen Algie. I have 2 kids who attend King schools. My son Jack is at Columbia and Evie is at KME. Both of my children have developmental disabilities. We stayed home during COVID. When we came back, it was a struggle to get back in the swing of things. I'm a very active mom and took the homeschooling like a champ, but I'm really, really glad that my kids are back in school. It is not easy having a disability. Jack has autism, anxiety, and was recently diagnosed with epilepsy. I'm always advocating for his accommodations and for him to be in a comfortable environment at school so he can learn like everyone else. But today I can say that Jack is in the best possible school situation he has had yet. His intervention specialist, Lissa Parker, is a phenomenal teacher and an even better advocate for kids like Jack. She's always working to get him in the classroom and able to learn and socialize with his friends. And I don't always get to say this, and we'll continue to have our challenges, but Jack is thriving. King's is exactly where he needs to be and where he can be included with his peers. I will say Evie is also doing great in the 3rd grade, but that girl is a beast. And I'm pretty sure she'll be a better advocate than her mama here soon. So I'm not going to get a word in edgewise with her and I won't speak for her, but she's happy at KME and we're really happy with her team. So I'm here today to tell my family story and ask that our community come through and vote yes for the levy. It's imperative that our district maintain its high levels of standards and its teachers and staff so that kids like mine will be included. My kids have the right to a free and appropriate public education, but they do not have access outside of public school. A good school is everything to families like mine, and we are part of this community. Please think about Jack and Evie when you vote. I will also add that if you're uneasy about cost, please vote down the ballot. Our state house is a supermajority Republican and has been for multiple years now. This is the reason we don't have more state funding. The schools are funded. The way that they're funded has been found unconstitutional, as said before by our Supreme Court 4 times, but our legislature fails to act over and over again. They are banking on gerrymandered districts because many of these reps are also invested in privatizing schools. Look at who is running, look at their websites, and if they look like they're going to help public schools thrive, vote for those candidates. The more state funding we get, the less often we have to have these levies. I'll also throw out that I'll be knocking doors in all of October, every weekend. So I'll be spreading the word about these state reps and also about our levy. If anybody wants to knock with me, let me know. Thank you.
Next on our agenda are the consent approval items for the treasurer. Mr. Morrow, did you have anything to add?
No, I don't have anything to add from the work session, but if the board has any questions, I'd be more than happy to talk through anything.
Excuse me. Did anyone have any questions? May I have a motion to approve the treasurer's items?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Morrow?
Mr. Skrull,
Yes.
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Mr. Belfron.
Yes. Next on the agenda are consent approval items for the superintendent, including men's varsity golf field trip and a government and law classes. Are there any questions for Mr. Sears? I have a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion. Mr. Morrow?
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Belfron,
Yes.
Mr. Skrull,
Yes.
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Ms. Cowan.
Yes.
Next on the agenda are the consent approval items for the assistant superintendent the Director of Curriculum excuse me, these are HR and Business for Mr. Spinner. Did we have any questions for Mr. Spinner and Mr. Lucky this evening regarding these items? With that, may I have a motion for these items for approval?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Morrow.
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Mr. Skirl,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Mr. Beltran.
Yes. Next on the agenda are the consent approval items for the Assistant Superintendent and Director of Curriculum with regards to educational programs. Are there any questions for Mrs. Martin and Mr. Freeman? May I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Second the motion, Mr. Morrow.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Beltran,
Yes.
Mr. Skirl,
Yes.
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Ms. Cowan.
Yes.
Next on the agenda are items presented by the board. Mrs. Phillips, did you want to discuss your items first or?
Absolutely. First off, I want to do a quick review of the Teaching and Learning Council meeting that was held on September the 9th. This was the formation. We included some new staff members, new community members, new teachers, some administrators. Purpose of the group was gone over very briefly: ongoing improvement of educational programs. This includes student achievement, instruction, and programming, continuous progress of planning, implementation, and review. And those are just some of the words taken directly from a couple of the different presentations, plus what Mr. Sears presented to us back in August. The cultural blueprint, power of 5 skills, and personalized learning. Mr. Friedman did an excellent job was Mr. Spinner going over that information, talking about the common understanding and beginning with the cultural blueprint implementation, the power of 5, and Mr. Sears mentioned that tonight. Students being good communicators, critical thinkers, problem solvers, collaborators, and career, college, and life ready. We had a brief discussion about gifted education. Grades 4 through 8 are working with math. 4 cluster groups, 5th and 6th grade, have classes in gifted, and there's a superior cog at Columbia called the Spark program. And then we also heard of some of the STEM things, and that was the end of that meeting. So, and our next meeting will be in November, and Mrs. Groff will take over her normal part of taking the notes and reporting out. So I just wanted to repeat, or just kind of give an update on the achievement liaison portion. And Mrs. Gold, could you bring up a real quick little video? The power of kindness. Mrs. Cadell had her 2nd grade students learn about the power of words and being positive. And that story will be on the news tonight, but this is a clip.
A tri-state teacher gives her 2nd grade class a special project, how the power of words can make all the difference.
It's just something that helps them to feel good about themselves.
The unique assignment, teaching a lesson in kindness. Tonight, Fox 19 now at 10. Tonight.
Is a good friend and is funny.
So that will be exciting, and I don't want to give away any of the information on the project, but let's just say it's been going on for quite a while. The Kings High School seniors participate in National Day of Service on September the 12th. The entire high school senior class used that day to volunteer. They had teacher chaperones and they went around the Kings community and greater Cincinnati area. Some of the areas where they volunteered was schools within the district, Matthew 25 Ministries, New Life Furniture Bank, SPCA Cincinnati, Four Paws for Ability, Gorman Heritage Farm, Carter Park, Stepping Stones, and many more. The list goes on. Mrs. Elder's students learned about patience when performing an experiment. One student took on the role of a botanist to show how vital stems are for transferring water from the roots up to the leaves. Another demonstrated how dish soap can spread food coloring into beautiful patterns by moving a little fat around. Project Lead the Way teacher, Mrs. Indress, had her human body system students work on finding forensic evidence through bone measurements. Another process or job that they did earlier in the week was collecting data on blood splatters in the blood splatter lab. Kings Junior High News, YouTube had some questions this week. How many holes does a straw have? Now, even Mr. Belfram had to enter into the comments on that one on Twitter, and he gave his answers. They interviewed the cheerleaders who wanted everyone to know that the best cheer was all of them, the one they were doing right at that moment. And then they did shout outs and of course the 10-second trivia time. And so Night News you can see every week on YouTube. So don't miss that one. Mrs. Casemeyer's third graders built solar ovens to learn about heat and light energy. Congratulations to the Kings Band. They were grand champions at the Bellbrook Invitational. Students also earned Best Music, Visual, Color Guard, Percussion, and General Effects in the class AAAA. So congratulations to the band. And last, we had, and we've already honored them once, but 3 Kings High School students were named as semifinalists, Aaron, Zach, and Sam. And we wish them the best when the announcements for the finalists will be in February of 2023.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Phillips. And as we continue with our items presented by the board, I'm sorry, did anyone have anything else before we end this? So I know we've had a lot of questions with regards to the book review process. I think I mentioned last week in the work session that I wanted to discuss this a little bit more. And what I want to do is just remind the public first of the policy 9130, just some highlights of said policy. And then I have a few comments with regards to the current discussion. And then obviously I open it up to my colleagues. So when we have matters regarding the instructional materials per the policy 9130, Mr. Sears, as our superintendent, can set guidelines addressing students and parents' rights and concerns regarding that information. And we have a template there as to how the complaint should be submitted. So we've had complaints submitted by some of the parties here this evening following said format. And upon receipt of that, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Mr. Freeman, can appoint a committee or create a committee. And he does that, and I think it's important that people understand, he does that with our teachers here. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Freeman, who are subject matter experts with regards to education, trained professionals, and they review these books based on our policy. And they have a certain time frame, I believe it's 10 days, Mr. Freeman, with in which they review, and they don't review the book, they read the book and they submit their findings to Mr. Freeman, who then submits them to Mr. Sears. At such time, we make a decision regarding those, the next actions with respect to said material. So I think it's really important. I wanted to highlight something here within the policy that I think doesn't get addressed, it hasn't been addressed here in our meetings publicly, is that no challenge material may be removed from the curriculum or from a collection of resource materials except by the action of the board. And no challenge material may be removed solely because it presents ideas that may be unpopular or offensive to some people. Any board action to remove material will be accompanied by the board's statement of its reasons for the removal. Now, since the complaints that we received at the beginning of the year, we have deemed books inappropriate for certain age levels. Books have been moved to different libraries, but speaking personally as my own stake in this, because we oftentimes have people who will attribute the comments of one board member to all five, I am not in the business or I have any interest in banning material. And that is me, Stacey Bertram, one of five, your board president. So if someone finds that objectionable, then you can respond to me. I'll let my colleagues speak for themselves, but I think it's very important that we just talk about how effective this process has been and ongoing, how much our administration and our teachers are making that effort to make sure that we have appropriate materials in the places that they belong in the district. But we are not necessarily going to just decide that we're just going to eliminate subject material because some may find that objectionable. As you've seen tonight, we've had people who find it objectionable, and then we've had other people who encourage that kind of diversity in our curriculum here. And we have to balance that and come to a solution that we feel is amenable to everyone within our district, not just to certain people. With respect to the comments with regards to time, you may not like, again, my response to that is that there's a lot of things going on within a school district over the course of a spring semester, a summer as well. And while we as board members may not have responded as promptly as you might have thought was appropriate, I know that Mr. Freeman has been in contact. We have gone through the process. We have followed policy. We have books that have been in informal review. I think all of the ones we've had submitted are in informal review, and we've had several that have gone through their formal reviews. And you have to understand that our committees, our teachers who are also educating children in this district, they have to go read the books as well. So it takes a process. And I don't personally, again, this is just me, I'll let you guys are more than welcome to have your comments. I don't apologize for that because that's a lot to balance, as you've heard from some of our staff tonight. So I would ask that people bear with us as we continue to work through this. But I also just would personally like to reiterate that per our policy, because one person finds it objectionable does not mean that it should be eliminated from the libraries or necessarily from the classrooms of this entire district. And just lastly, on a personal level, I have a son who's graduated from King's. I have another child who's here in King's. Personally, I have a little bit of an issue with a lot of the books that we have that are constantly being complained about, but there are books that are within our curriculum, and some of you have heard me say this before, that were challenging for my son, that put him in awkward positions and situations. Some of these books are considered American classics, and yet they're still in the libraries. And I just find it, somewhat frustrating that those books never seem to get complained about. But as we attempt to have a more vast curriculum that's representative of everyone who lives in this district, we have people who find them objectionable. And with response to one of the comments that we had, in all due respect, ultimately it is the responsibility of a parent to know what their child is reading. So we can put in safeguards and controls and do what we feel is appropriate here, but we are not a child's parents. Again, my opinion on the matter. But I'll just say finally for myself, I believe in the process. I believe in our director. I believe in our curriculum. I believe in our teachers and what they're doing. And they take these reviews, they do a very critical analysis on these books, and they don't want to put kids in a position where they're uncomfortable or they feel like they're being forced to read material that may not be appropriate for them. I would just caution people to stop looking at, some people are suggesting that these are intentional efforts, that there's an effort by our staff and the people who work here to undermine something. And that is not the case at all. We are trying to provide, continue to provide the standard of excellence that we have as one of the best school districts in the state of Ohio. And just because you may find it objectionable or you don't agree, doesn't mean that the people who work here aren't doing things in the best interest of the students and parents that live here. I got on my soapbox a little, I got off of the policy. I just wanted to restate that that's how this works. And I would also just ask again that people would bear with us as we review these, because it takes so long because our staff is being critical. They're taking the time to read it and they're taking the time to assess the material. So that's what I had. The floor is all of yours.
I would say that looking at the policy and reviewing through it, which is our basic role as school board members, we make policies, we make sure that the policies are followed. And from the information that I could see from the policy, I think that everything has been followed, that the process is working smoothly. And for the public to understand that as policy people, we make the policy, but yet then we don't get into the management of how the guidelines and the committees are rolled out. We look then at the summary results. And as you said, Mr. Belfram, we make our decisions based on that.
I'm going to address some of the people that are here. I want to thank you for bringing the books to our attention. It is very important to me as a board member that books are in the appropriate age libraries. It's very important. I read I'll Give You the Sun cover to cover. And I will tell you, there is some shocking excerpts, as we have heard. And they are all in the very beginning of the book. Not all, that I should never talk in black and whites. Most of them are early on in the book. As you go through the book, it becomes a beautiful story about relationships and love. And I literally closed the book and started crying. And my husband is sitting there like, you are such, are you really moved by this book that much? And I said, yeah, when you get over the shock value of the initial part of the book, it is a beautiful story. Is it appropriate for a 5th and 6th grader? No. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. And we've moved that to the age appropriate library that it belongs in. I'm going to have a hard time ever banning a book because I just don't think that that is what our country was founded on. We, as a board member, we took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and that includes freedom of speech. And I can't see removing something I just can't really see removing any book, but I do want it in the age appropriate spot. Regarding the high school and the junior high library, it does concern me that we don't have enough space to have a junior high library. I wish we did, because I do think there's a difference between a 7th grader and an 11th grader. But we don't have any space. So we don't have a choice. So I did contact both our junior high principal, and I contacted Mr. Sears, and I asked them what communication goes out to parents to let them know that their 7th and 8th grader is going into the high school and checking out books. Every 7th and 8th grade English teacher sends home an email to parents notifying them that that is where they check out books. And it is their responsibility to monitor those books. We can't monitor every single book. It is my job as a parent, when my kid comes home and they are reading a book, for me to look and see what that book is. That's my job. I'm sorry. It is not anybody else's job. So for right now, I appreciate those 7th and 8th grade English teachers doing that. I guess that's my point. I value your opinion as community members, but I also really respect parents, and they have the authority of what their kids read and don't read. I would allow both of my sons that were here today to read that book, and in fact, I would encourage them to read it. Some other people may not.
Could you speak into the mic, please? You're fading away.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize. Some other people may not want their children reading that book, and I respect them for that choice too. I think that's the difference here. We just have to have a little more respect that everybody, there's a difference of opinion, and that's okay. Thank you.
And I appreciate the concerns that have been brought up, and I just wanted to speak to our parents. If you have any concerns, we have our policy, but you might have concerns that go beyond our policy. And just understand, I'm sure you all know out there who are watching and who are here, we have a great group of teachers. And I know that I had a concern when my daughter was in junior high with a book that she was asked to read. And I talked to her because I believe in, having my child handle herself first. And I just said, will your teacher allow you to have other options? Because I just don't think this is the right book for you right now. And she told me that she thought she would. She went to school, the teacher allowed her to read something else. And that's what I would say, going to Janelle's thought about, parents knowing what their kids are reading, that just know our teachers are willing to talk with you and work with you. And I understand every child's different, every family's different, what impacts different kids at different levels. We just need to work together to find what fits best for all of our students and for all of our families, because we respect every single one of our families, and we respect your concerns. And we want to make sure everyone feels welcome, and just know the teachers are willing to listen and willing to work with you. And we're always willing to listen to your concerns.
I think Mr. Belfram put it very well when he said the word balance. I think we need to have that balance of, the book, something may seem unpopular or offensive, but we also need to realize that we're raising children in schools where we've got diversity of what we all learn. And again, I encourage parents to reach out to teachers, talk to your children, find out what they're reading, because yes, parents need to know what their children are reading. And if they find that they shouldn't be reading that, as Ms. Cowan said, reach out to the teacher. And I'm going to pose a question to Mr. Freeman and Mrs. Martin. If a parent reaches out to a teacher about something that is being read, what is our policy there? Do the teachers have something else for a child to read?
I'd like to just make a quick distinction around that. So I think that the first piece is that the books that have been challenged are all library books. So those are books that are choice options for students. So the answer to that would be you return the book, you could select another one.
So if a child checks out one of these books, is a parent contacted?
No.
Some of them are classroom. They weren't all library.
So the other distinction about like maybe some of the other examples that are used, if there's something that's a required read, then yes, there are other examples of books that, you know, a teacher would work with a student and family to select something else.
Can I add just two very quick, and I appreciate this board discussion because it helps on our end from an administrative standpoint. Two things that I just want to clarify, that on the committees that Mr. Freeman puts together, there are parents on that committee.
I'm sorry, yes.
So I just wanted to, there are parents of those grade levels.
No, you may not.
They're on
We're-
that. The second piece is Mr. Freeman is working on this fall an acquisition process for new material. So there will be procedural safeguards in place and guidelines. That process will start for implementation for new material that'll begin for next school year. So those are just two pieces I wanted to add. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, and that should be done. Like, what's,
The goal for that is the end of the calendar year.
thank you.
And as far as sourcing for the classroom library books, what are some of the ways that those are accumulated? We've mentioned the King's Foundation. That's not district funds, correct? Are some of these books purchased by the teachers, I would assume? Would any of those classroom books be also purchased with a certain budget of district money, or how would that work?
I mean, teachers would love it if in my curriculum budget, I could give you X number of dollars. In fact, a certain English teacher I know who's sitting in the audience may love for me to do that. We're not able to do that.
That's what I
Unfortunately.
was, that's
So
what I was
we do
getting
not.
at, yeah.
We do not. And one of the, you know, items of discussion that's been brought up by the community, you know, are teacher libraries. So you're right. I want to acknowledge that. You know, you're right. Some of those books were teacher library books, classroom library books, and not ones available in our school collection. And so that's something that we do need to have conversation about, and we intend to have conversation about those guidelines.
I want to add one more thing. Matt and Dana both sent out emails and information as far as keeping us updated on the committee work and which books you have been working on and things. And that was very helpful, I think, to receive those at the appropriate time from the committee. So thank you for that information.
Any other comments?
I would just say, in my opinion, I feel like the policy and the process is working from what I have observed so far. I mean, granted, I've only been here since January. I know some people were interested in having citizens be part of a community or a committee. And at this time, I don't feel that that's necessary because I feel like the process is working. I will say, I'm only representing Janelle Groff here. I do read every single email. I do not respond to ones that are written to employees. If I'm copied on it, I read it, but I don't always respond. And Stacy, thank you for being, you know, our voice many times on returning emails. But those were two questions that came out, and I wanted just to let people know my opinion on that.
Good puts.
Any other discussion? Right. Next on the agenda is the legislative update. Mr. Skrull.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Belfram. So just a few things to identify this month for legislative updates. First, with some state updates, the State Committee on Computer Science voted to approve a final report of the State of Ohio Computer Science Plan. So that kind of lines up a little bit with the whole STEM presentation we had earlier today. Next, we have the Ohio School Report Cards. I know this was discussed earlier, but I'm just putting this out on there because the state did release school report cards. And there are also links to the state report card, to the King's report card, and also the guidebook for the report cards. Then a federal update, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, they released updated COVID-19 guidance that removes the quarantine rule for unvaccinated individuals, the screening of healthy students and employees, and the 6-foot social distancing standard. And I also included in here, there is basically just a watch list of items that have been presented through the House and the Senate, but have not been yet presented to Governor DeWine for signature. So if you want to go ahead and take a look at those, there's about 12.5 items out there with a brief description and where they're at in the process.
Any questions for Mr. Skrull? Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, may I have a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting?
I will make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Morrow.
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Mr. Skrull,
Yes.
Mr. Belfram.
Yes. Have a good evening, everyone.